everybody. Hello. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who came out and purchased the book. You guys are amazing. I guess I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Alonni Whitaker, and I recently wrote a book called Untangled. And I just wanted to have this Q&A session so that everybody can share this experience with me. I know as I was writing the book and releasing it, everyone was like, I didn't know you were writing a book. So I just wanted everyone to be part of this part and me releasing it. I know there were a few questions that people had about the book, maybe a few entries that people would like me to read. So I'm going to start by answering the questions in the Q&A. If you guys are on the live feed and would like to put a question in the chat, go right ahead, and I'm going to get to those questions after I finish the ones in the box. Okay. So the first question, what's the difference between you now and you at the beginning of writing the book? Ooh, that was a good question. So at the beginning of writing the book, I didn't even know that I was writing the book. I put journal entries together from as far back as 2016. So that was a whole different me. I was in college at the time. I had recently gone through an ACL surgery, and I was finishing, well, I thought I was finished with sports. So at that time, it was a big transitioning phase for me. Going through injuries, I don't know if I have any athletes in here, but going through injuries is kind of traumatic because it feels like the end of the world. And at the time of my injury, I felt like my world was crashing down. I'd always been an athlete in my head. I did sports from as far as I can remember back. And it was kind of sad because it was one, I used athletics as an outlet, and it felt like I didn't have my outlet anymore. And so I turned to journaling and I turned to poetry. Yes, Gammy.
An outlet for what?
Emotions, stress, frustration. Yeah. So that was kind of the person that I was in 2016 when I was first writing this book, even though I didn't know I was writing a book. And now I'd say that I'm in a way different place now. I found multiple different outlets for emotions and stress and frustration. Of course, an ACL injury doesn't ruin your career in anything. I actually went back to school for sports after my ACL surgery. So it kind of feels like my life is way more together now than it was before. Good question. Thank you for asking that. Next question. What was your inspiration for writing your book? What inspired? Well, I think life inspired me to write the entries in the book, but to put it together and tell my story and release it to the public, my inspiration is mental health. I studied psychology in school. I studied social work in my graduate program. So just seeing different individuals who struggled with the same things that I've struggled with and don't know how to explain it, or struggled with worse things, just being an example and leading by example to express your feelings in whatever way you like, in whatever way makes you feel free.
Alonni, this is just a question.
Yes.
Alonni, are you planning on writing any more books?
I am planning on writing more books, but I'm not sure what they're going to be. Hello. So I am planning on writing more books. I have Untangled 2 in the works, not really sure what it's going to be called, but I've also planned on possibly doing books on overall wellness and the steps to getting well in a general way, in case some people don't really learn by reading someone else's story. Someone would rather have a more direct guide. So yeah, there are more books coming. Are there any more Zoom questions?
No, that was the only one so far.
Okay, sorry. It's okay. How long have you been writing and what drove you to share? So I've been writing and journaling since I learned how to write in a journal. I have journals from the time I was, in preschool? Yeah, preschool. So I was 3, 4. And I remember I was looking back at my old journals and I found one entry. It's like, when I get older, I want to be the president and I want to be a billionaire. And I was like, I don't really want to be those anymore. But yeah, I've been writing forever. What was the next question? What drove you to share? One of my friends, when we were kind of going through our spiritual self-love journey, I shared some of my poems with her, and some of those are in this book actually. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so good. You need to publish it. You need to put it out there." I was like, "Put it out there? Like, why would I do that? Why would I make a book?" And so one day she told me, she was like, "Just put together your journal entries. Like, you can make a book." And I actually did it. And once I did, I was like, "Wow, yeah, she's right. I could write a book." So that's what drove me to write this book. So the next question is, what is your favorite poem? My favorite poem is Interlude 5. It's not really a poem, it's kind of like, it's a few lines. I guess it's a little free form poem. It has an illustration at the bottom of a girl meditating in like the middle of the mountains. And it goes, "An open mind and heart are in touch with all that surround them." And that's what I want people to take away. Open your mind, open your heart, and you'll be in touch with everything that happens in the world. Yes.
What is grandmother's favorite poem?
Grandmother's favorite poem is Flawful. And that's why I did a video about it. Everyone check it out on YouTube. Next question. What is next after this book? So what I really want to do is open up a space to inspire others to do the same. Maybe not write a poetry book per se, maybe create a music album or make a dance or something, anything creative that allows them to express their emotions. So I've been planning on putting together a youth program that brings students together or children together who just want to be creative and teach them the history of whichever art they choose, whether it be cooking or carving or dancing. So that's in the works within the next 1 to 2 years, hopefully. When did you realize you could write a book? When it was already written. I didn't realize that it would be long enough to make a book until it was all out on the pages and I could flip through it. And I was like, wow, this is really a book. I was surprised. I was really shocked. I was really shocked. Are you looking to collaborate with other authors? That's a good question. I would be open to that. I'm always open to trying new things. I collaborated with a local small business to make merchandise. I think that every artistic project that you do with someone else is a collaboration. So the video I did for Lawful, I worked with one of my friends and he did the video for me. So I'm open to anything. If another author wanted to come together and create something, I'm more than open. DM me on Instagram, email me empowerhumanity20@gmail.com. Yeah. Does anybody else have any other questions? I'm going to open up the floor. Yes.
What did you learn about the process of bringing the whole project together?
The whole project together.
Meaning the book, the podcast, and all of those elements.
That it's way easier creating it than releasing it. Because to create something, it comes so naturally to me that it didn't take long at all, and I enjoyed it so much that it didn't feel like a hassle or a burden or something that I had to do. Advertising is not my lane, marketing is not my thing. So like releasing it and giving it to other people was definitely something that was not easy. So it taught me that. Yes.
Maybe not while you were writing, but after you wrote your poems, whatever you did, did you feel that your parents, your grandmother, or how did you think that they would feel after reading your poetry?
Um,
Oops.
I gave my mom a big thing of tequila to drink while she's reading this. But I knew that my mom always tells me that I'm not the first person to walk any path. I'm not the first person to do anything in life. So them reading the book, they may question when some of these emotions were happening because I'm not a very expressive person on a day-to-day basis. But I don't think that any of the emotions and words and feelings that they're going to experience while reading this book are going to be foreign to them. It's just going to be I didn't know that you were going through this. I didn't know that this is how you felt. And I realized that maybe it's kind of bittersweet. Like I knew that they would feel kind of bittersweet.
I got another, I always got
Come through with the questions, Gary. What's up?
But when I read the book, I had 1,001 questions.
Yes.
So how did you feel with me asking the questions that I asked?
I'm a very open person. I'm such a person, if you ask me, I go through so much self-reflection and overanalyzing stuff that it helped me self-reflect even more. And it opened my eyes to how I was feeling during this stuff. Because I know one question you asked me, you were like, there's a lot of pain in this book. And I was like, is there a lot of pain? But the first chapter is labeled pain. So obviously there's some pain in here. So I was very comfortable. Like it doesn't bother me when people ask me questions. It kind of helps me turn back and point the finger at myself, like place a mirror in front of myself and do more self-reflection. I kind of appreciate the questions actually. Anybody else?
From a marketing perspective, you have gear that people can buy. Can you tell them a little bit about the products that they can buy online and what inspired it all with you all?
Okay. The products online, I have a apparel line called Empowered by Elise Millie Designs. And it's a collaboration between me, Power and Humanity, and Elise Millie Designs, which is another local small business. And we've actually been working together for a while. So it was just a way for us to create something together. Like I said before, I love creating with other people. Two heads are always better than one. So we put together a sweatshirt and sweatpants combo. We put together a t-shirt and a sponsor t-shirt. So the way the sponsor t-shirt works is that there's a Google Forms, and when you fill it out, you donate as much as you like, as little as you like, and your name goes on the t-shirt for this year and for all future years of Power and Humanity. And yeah, the more the merrier. If you sponsor more than $50, you not only get your name on your shirt, but you get a free shirt as well. So that's cool. I also have a podcast on Power and Humanity. Would you like to hear about that? So, podcast. The podcast is just me. The first season is me talking to different people in my community about their experiences in life. So I know I did a episode on middle school and what the middle school process is like. I did an episode on conformity, on spirituality, and it's just different people talking about their experiences. My second season is a shorter season. It's called Power in the Self. And Power in the Self is more of a guide to tapping into your inner energy by first letting go, by looking at the people around you, by checking yourself about the language you use, and about reflecting on all the experiences you have to kind of tune into yourself and tune into how to use your power in a positive way and how your power projects into the world on a daily basis. Yeah. What else? Any other questions? Anything else you guys want me to talk about?
Oh, you
Yeah.
didn't really talk about the things you experienced as you were putting your art together.
Do you want me to go through the whole entire process of the book?
Briefly. You don't have
Okay.
to like.
Okay. Let's do it. So I'm just gonna explain like the chapters and kind of what I was feeling during them. And maybe that'll give a better idea. So the first chapter is called Ode to Healing Dopamine. And I like to throw my little psychology in there. And dopamine is just anything that helps you feel good. So it could be the good things that help you feel good, the bad things that help you feel good, anything that makes you feel good. So I know me, when I'm not feeling well, I like to eat chocolate. Chocolate's not always the best, but I'm gonna eat it anyway because it makes me feel good, right? So in Ode to Healing Dopamine, I have pain, that's the first chapter, and that's kind of all the times when I was just hurting inside, like upset that someone hurt my feelings or frustrated that I can't figure out my feelings. And then I have love or lust. So those are both two forms of infatuation towards someone else that make you feel good. When you love someone, obviously it brings a good feeling. And when you have lust for someone, it brings a good but confusing feeling. And people often confuse love for lust and lust for love. So I put that in the first chapter because it's just a rush of emotions. And then last I have a cry for help. Because after I ask myself, are you in love or is it lust? I usually didn't know the answer. We know how, romance goes, young adult romance. So cry for help is kind of just my emotions as I was trying to distinguish between love or lust. And that may not even be between a romantic partner, but for the sport I played, for the major I studied in school, for the friends I had around me, for life in general. So cry for help is just me realizing that I can't figure life out by myself. Next, I have Ode to Living, and it's endorphin. And endorphin is kind of like a balancing chemical that you have in your brain. So the first chapter is confusion. And of course, when you're balancing something out, it goes from one side to another. You're confused. Like, is it love? Is it lust? Do I like this? Do I not like this? And then life is the same thing. Like, we always say that life is like a roller coaster. You go through your ups and downs. Transition to healing and healing, they're both chapters that I realized, I think that those are the chapters where I have poems of realizing how negative the world can be, but like accepting the negativity. And then the last chapter of poems is called Ode to Thriving, Oxytocin. And first I have acceptance, where it's me accepting the bad stuff for the bad stuff, but seeing the good in it. I have Black Mermaid, where there are poems about me embracing all that I am. And then I have True Love, where I've accepted myself for me. I've accepted that love isn't about a person or a thing in my life. It's not about getting all A's. It's not about being perfect all the time. True love is just accepting where you are, accepting that the sun's gonna rise, the sun's gonna set, and we have 24 hours in a day. And just moving on like that, okay with anything that happens and excited to make mistakes and fail and learn from those failures. And then I have the last section that's called, but wait, there's more. And those are just like the closing poems where I have the happier stuff. And okay, well, life may be a roller coaster. There may be pain, like there may be confusion, but in the end, it's still beautiful confusion. It's still beautiful pain. And then my last chapter is like my acknowledgements, my author Q&A. And I called it Ode to Serotonin because serotonin is just like, it's technically the anxiety chemical, but anxiety is there's a purpose for anxiety. So in your life, you get anxious when you need to focus. So I put the acknowledgements and the author Q&A about the author in that part because the people I acknowledged were the ones who helped me focus. The stuff about me is what I focused on. So that's what I used the last section for. And during this time, I was going through a whirlwind of emotions. So it started off with me in a relationship, and then that relationship ended, and then I got hurt in sports, and then I moved away for school. Shoot, and then I moved home, right? And then I moved back away from school. So it's just a big roller coaster of my life and how I experienced it and how I got through all those good times and bad times.
Did you feel vulnerable when you wrote the book? Do you have any apprehensions about putting it out there, yourself out there like that?
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. This was very vulnerable. And I think that part of me writing this book was me stepping into my vulnerability and me stepping into my discomfort. Because as a mental health professional, I feel like I always spend my time telling my clients, it's okay to be uncomfortable. Like, you have to get vulnerable in order to grow. Like, you can't stay in your comfort zone, right? But how can I say that as a mental health professional and I haven't done the same? How can I tell my clients to be creative and express themselves creatively when I haven't done the same? So I decided to practice what I preach, like I said, lead by example and do the things that I'm encouraging others to do so they can see, like, okay, worst case scenario, this happens. And this is great to me. I'm ecstatic. I couldn't be happier. Yes.
For those that don't know your educational background and how you got to that point, can you share that with people?
Okay.
Profession
Like,
and how you got to that
To
profession?
this profession. Okay. I think naturally I've always just liked to learn. I've always been curious about stuff and I've never cared if I failed or if I succeeded. So when I was younger, I went to Montessori school, and I think that really shaped my mindset because working with kids now, they have so much exposure to dolls and YouTube, and Montessori school is more focused on practical life. So, like, cooking and building blocks and understanding concepts. So I think that's formed me to be a conceptual person. And after Montessori school until kindergarten, I went to public school, which was different because in Montessori school, we didn't have to ask to use the bathroom. We didn't have to do math at this time, go to art at this time. We were allowed to go play with what attracted to us because everything around us was an educational tool. It didn't matter what you were playing with because you're going to learn something. So when I went to public school, it was like a slap in the face. Like, what do you mean I have to do math at this time every single day? Like, what? Like, what do you mean I have to do art? I was always embarrassed to, like, speak up in class because everybody's looking at you in public school because you're all in one classroom learning. And in Montessori school, it's, I don't want to say a free for all, but we have the option of exploring what we like to explore. And so going through public school, I think I was a little timid. And yeah, I was just timid. And then as I went through public school, I went to elementary school, middle school, and in high school. I don't think I'm a morning person because waking up that early did something and I did not like it. I did not like waking up early. There are many days, not so many days, when I was like, I don't feel like going to the store right now. Can I go later?
I was not fighting that fight. I was not fighting that fight. I felt like 180 days, she's a good student. She knows how to read. If she needs to figure it out, she'll figure it out. I didn't fight that fight. I did not make my children go to school. If they said that they didn't want to go to school, they just said, I'm tired, I don't want to go to school. I don't feel well, I want to go to school. I did not force them to go to school. I just didn't.
I just had to get my work done.
You just had to get that work done. You need to make sure that you get that work done when you do that.
So I just did what I had to do. And I didn't see school as like a social setting. I saw it as a setting for learning. And when I got to high school, I realized that people saw it as a social setting. And I was confused and I didn't like it. And I wanted to get out as soon as possible. So my junior year, I decided that I was going to leave early. I was like, I don't think I'm going to come for a birthday. I think this is it. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, you're going to graduate early? Like, next semester? I was like, no. Like, at the end of the school year, I'm leaving. And they're like, how are you going to do that? And I was like, I don't know. I'm going to figure it out. And I graduated a year early from high school, and then I went to college, not really knowing what to expect. I live in New Jersey. I went to college in Florida. And that was a big leap that I was not ready for. But I think that kind of pushed me to be more independent because like this is what you asked for, this is what you wanted, like this is what you gotta go through then. So yeah, I think it helped me grow as a person a lot because I was forced to get out of the mindset of always having mommy and daddy around to help. And I think that because I was so open to exploring and because I was so open to learning that I enjoyed that pain that I went through. Because freshman year is hard for freshmen in high school who go through all 4 years of college. Like being a year younger than everyone else and having to adjust to living with strangers puts you in a place where there's two transitions in one. And for a long time, I was just like sad without my family because I was around a bunch of people that I didn't know. I was like, wait a second, like I'm used to having my brother and my mother and a different schedule. But after I went through my freshman year, I remember saying like, I hate it, I don't want to come back, like I'm not happy here. But once the second semester was over, I was like, wait, I actually like it here, I want to go back. So I think it's something that I wasn't expecting, but it turned out for the better. And then after my freshman year of college, I got hurt during cheerleading and had to come home. And so when I came home, I went to community college for a semester, and that was terrible because I had just adjusted to be living with other people that I didn't know. Like I adjusted to a whole different climate. And now I'm coming back home to the place where I just got used to not being. So that semester, I was like, no, I gotta leave. I gotta go again. So I figured out a way to go somewhere else. And I found another school. I did acrobatics and tumbling. I ended up spending 2.5 years there. I got the best GPA I'd ever gotten. I made amazing friends. Shout out to you, Lizzie and Naya. I know you're on the live feed. My major was psychology in undergrad. And then after that, I knew that jobs in psychology didn't pay well unless you had higher education. So I had two choices: to work up the ladder and start from the bottom, or to go and get more school so I could get a better paying job. And I decided to just go get more school in while I was still used to being a student. And that was so hard. I used to do full-time graduate program, do an internship, and work full-time. So my days were like 12, 13-hour days, 6, 7 days a week. And if it was 6 days a week, the 7th day of the week, I'd probably be working a good 5, 6 hours. And it kind of pushed me into like an adult mindset. Like this is what you need in order to take the next step in your life. And during that time, I not only learned another practice, because every time you go to school, you're learning a different practice. Social work and psychology are two completely different things, even though they're in the same field. So I was learning another practice, and technically I had 2 jobs because an internship is just a volunteer job. And it helped me push forward and just keep going, because I know there were days when I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm only 1 semester into this graduate program. I was like, nope, you already put the thing in for the student loans, like you gotta keep going. If you don't do it, then it's a waste. And I'm glad I did, because now I love my job. I love the students that I work with, and I would not have chosen a different path if I could.
Guess you're not coming back to New Jersey, huh?
No, winter time.
So how did your parents prepare? How did your family? Because your life was really about a lot of family.
Yeah.
So how did your family prepare you to be okay when you weren't okay, and to write the book?
My family is very independent. Cray cray.
Well, that's too.
They're very independent, very free spirited, very free thinking, and they allowed me to ask questions. And I think that's one thing that I talked about school earlier. That's one thing I was confused at school. At school, when you ask a question, you always got in trouble. At home, when I asked a question, I always learned more. And I think that made me more curious, and that made me more willing to explore. Because when you ask a question, you don't get your question answered, you have two options. You can either forget the question or you can go find the answer. And I always went and found the answer. And I think that people who went to public school all their lives, they weren't allowed to explore the answer. They were always told exactly what it was and whatever teacher's words that it was, and they had to accept that for that instead of being able to find like another interpretation of it. There are a million perspectives of everything. So just having one is detrimental. And I didn't get that detriment because I knew that even though my teacher was saying one thing, that I knew another answer that was just as right, just in different words. So my family helped me by allowing me to ask questions and teaching me how to think freely and being there for me when maybe I was being stubborn and keeping it real with me all the time, no matter what. Because my family does not know how to lie.
No lies here.
No lies, maybe sometimes a little too truthful, but you know, like I said, sometimes it's that brutal hard pain that you need to grow. Like, I think the comfort zone is like a circle. So if you're like sitting inside that comfort zone, that brutal hard pain is like the barrier. Once that barrier pops, you can just be free. You know, that's how I think of it. Any other questions? Comments? Angry outbursts?
Angry outbursts?
No?
Well,
Any-
you sound like you're in a good place. You love your job. Not too many people can say that, right?
Especially at your age. Like
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
pretty much still trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah, well, I decided one day that I wasn't going to do anything that I didn't want to do. I remember, Elijah, do you remember that day when we were sitting on the steps and I was tying your shoe? And you did something that
We were kids.
when we were kids,
Yeah.
and he did something that my mom did not like, and he was gonna be punished for it. He was questioning like, "Oh, why do I have to do this? Like, why am I getting this punishment?" My mom was like, "Well, you knew that if you did this thing that you get this punishment." He was like, "But why does it have to be that way?" I was like, "Elijah, we can do what we want in this world. Like, you can do anything you want, but you have to deal with the consequences." And my mom was like, "No, you can't do whatever you want." And I was like, "No, you really can't. Like, you just have to deal with the consequences." And my brother was like, "No." And I think that's how I lived. Like, I decided, like, I'm not going to do anything that makes me unhappy anymore. I'm not going to do anything that makes me miserable anymore. Like, what's the point?
When you, I can't remember, I read the book so long ago when it was just a draft. And one of the questions I asked you was, why you didn't go to your family, whoever, and you said you had an eclectic amount of friends
Mm-hmm.
and people that you went through who had different lifestyles,
Mm-hmm.
different whatever, and that made you come to the conclusion that you came to, or made you figure out whatever it was that you needed to figure out. I want you to.
So when you asked, I think you asked, like, why didn't you come to us?
Right.
And my answer was, I didn't think I needed to. You know, when you think you know the right answer, you're just gonna do what it is, and then it's gonna bite you in the butt later. And that's basically
I
how it
had
happened.
great questions, right? I
You
mean,
had good questions.
my main question was the first love thing.
Mhm.
I was like, well, was this in college? Was it in high school? Was it in grammar school? And when you said grammar, I said, how you know that was that puppy love? What was it? That was my.
You know they had the Disney Channel.
I was like,
You know they had the Disney
I
Channel.
couldn't wrap my mind.
So, okay, the question was, how did you ask how I knew what love was or when I experienced my first
Yes.
love?
Yes.
And I told her, I was like, it wasn't like I was in love with a person per se. I was in love with the feeling that I got afterwards. You know, I was in love with the feeling that I felt while I was with that person. So I found myself chasing that feeling and chasing things that made me feel that way. You know, so I was more in love with like my emotions and how I felt than with like the person or anything that was done.
So when I said that was puppy love.
Well, you got old people that are dealing with that right at this very
True,
second.
too. But
Old
and
people.
then after we talked about it, I was like, well, when did you come up with that? After or during?
So it was, oh, like when I knew. Well, I think that when I was younger, I didn't really know it was love. Like I said, like, oh, you're my boyfriend, but like I didn't really know that that feeling was love, and that's what's kind of confusing to me now because I feel like in that moment it was just so euphoric and I was happy. I was la, 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 and everything was butterflies and rainbows. And now I find myself meeting people and having conversations with different people, and they may not even be people that I'm like romantically attracted to, but after speaking, I'm like, wow, that was great. Like I really like them, or I find myself in a lot of different scenes, and I always meet people who I connect with or relate to. And I think it's because I can find that feeling that I enjoy, and I know how to create conversations that bring it out of people. And I think that that puppy love, if that's what we want to call it, helped me a little bit because it helped me identify what feeling I liked, not necessarily what actions I liked or what what physical, is that what we want to call it? Physical visualization?
But I
How
don't
someone
think, was
looks.
it physical? It wasn't physical, man.
No, it wasn't really a physical love.
It was like more perceptual, maybe.
I think
or-
it's definitely platonic.
Okay.
I think it was platonic.
And you guys were probably just friends.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
I just wish I had written down more of the poems that I had, because I had questions about I had poems. I was like, oh my goodness. This is a little bit too much for the old grandmother. Grandmother take.
That's why I tried to break it down into sections. Read this section at a time. Yeah. I kind of. Anything else? Any other comments?
So do you think it's gonna be hard for you to write the second book now that you don't have those same emotions going on? Of course, you have different challenges in life, but do you think that it's gonna be more of a challenge to write book number 2, poem book number 2? You're not concerned you have that at this point?
I think that I'm just gonna do it the same way that I did the first one. So for the first book, I just allowed myself to write as I wrote. Whatever I felt like journaling is what I journaled. Whatever I didn't feel like journaling is what I didn't journal. So I'm doing the second book the same way. So I'm not promising this thing coming out like next year, maybe out in the next 5 years, or the next 10 years. But whenever I feel like I reached another turning point in my life, I'm gonna sit back, reflect, and if I can make it into a book, why not? If I can share it with people, why not? Because what's the purpose of holding all of my experiences and all of my growth in for myself and not letting anybody else experience it? Because maybe they can learn something from it, or maybe they can ask me a question and I can be a resource to them. And that's really my whole goal in all of this. I just want to be a resource to everyone around me in order for mental health healing, physical healing. Like, I love psychology. The psyche is just the soul. Psyche is just another word for soul. Yeah. I'm getting ahead now. I'm feeling it.
So from that standpoint, what I'm gathering so far, the book, is it a collection of poetry and just like journal entries from?
It's
Like your life
poetry,
experience?
which are the journal entries, and I have like pictures. So they're not me physically like journaling, like dear diary,
Right.
this is what happened this day.
Okay.
It's just the poems that came from my journal.
Hmm.
And the pictures that I drew. Like, I remember one day I was up probably at like 3 o'clock in the morning with the windows open, watching a thunderstorm, drawing one of the pictures that are in here. So it's just random stuff like that.
When did you start drawing? I didn't know that you could draw. Like when did that start?
I feel like some days I just pick up a pen and paper and start doodling. Like I have a whole sketchbook. I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing is kind of full.
Wow, I didn't know
So
that.
it's just, like I said, I figured out different releases for different things that I feel.
Mhm.
Because I'm not very verbally expressive. Like my friends will always say, like, you don't share your feelings, you don't share your emotions. I'm like, you're right. Like I just release them because like there's so many of them. They're always feeling an emotion.
I got a question about you and your brothers
Mhm.
with writing your feelings or in your poetry or anything. Did any of that have to do with interaction with your brothers, how they saw things, how they saw life and what they did, or it was just you?
That's really hard to say because I think that me and my brothers are so much alike and we share so many like conceptual ideas that naturally they may relate to this book because they may have felt something the same way. So it's really hard for me to differentiate how they've affected the book.
Have they
or
read
how
your book?
they.
I know Elijah.
I know Josh did it. Josh, did you read my book?
What is the theme of your book?
The theme of my book is self-love. So it's my journey. Well, I called it a journey of self-love because it's how I went from interpreting love as romantic to love as a state of being. So a lot of people see like romantic love, like, I love you, so I'm gonna get you flowers and I'm gonna rub your feet and I'm gonna do anything you say, to a place of just love in general. Like, I love my life, so I'm gonna do things that make me happy. Or I love being around people, so I'm gonna find somewhere to volunteer. Like, I don't wanna get any monetary gain. I don't wanna benefit from this at all, except for like my soul, my psyche. You know, I just wanna be happy and spread all of the love and positivity that I have. And yeah, that's the gist of it. And it just goes through the stages of how I got there, through heartbreak, through crying, through confusion, pain, and how I learned to accept it and what feelings I felt as I got over it. And in the end, it's just peace. Any other questions? Yes.
Now, your degree is in what again? Is it
My undergraduate degree is in psychology,
Right.
and my master's degree is in social work, but clinical social work.
clinical? Did you like apply your, I guess, your own analysis to your poems either before or after? I guess before you put them in here or after? Like, have you gone back through to kind of read it and then kind of reflect on self in that way?
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that part of it was also that I feel like going through school, I wasn't really learning what certain things were. I was just learning how to name them in a psychology place of business. So a lot of the things I was like, oh, that's what you call that. And you can see it through my poetry. You can see like, oh, we have something called crying spells, and you cry a lot. It's just a crying spell where like sadness and like isolation is just when you're withdrawn. And I know I have a poem here called like sinking, slipping, sipping. And it's just, I think I wrote that in the bathtub after like a really, really rough week. And I was just sitting there. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't want to be around any people. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to see anyone. And I think I spent like the day after that in bed, just recuperating myself, because I think of myself as an introvert, even though I'm very outspoken and I'm very outgoing. I really recharge by myself through self-reflection and sleep. Classic. So I think that my education has definitely guided me on this journey.
Yes, what's next for you?
So next I want to just keep growing Power in Humanity, and I didn't intentionally create Power in Humanity as only a podcast or only a book publishing. I created it as kind of a movement into the self. And like, I've noticed that America and the world has become this capitalistic, individualist society. And it just doesn't make sense. Like, you can't do anything by yourself. You can't do anything on your own. So in the podcast, I have other people speaking on it. In the book, I had my best friend draw the cover for it. The merch I have is a collaboration with another small business owner. So next, I want to expand to reaching out to youth and other people who have the passion to teach and educate youth on how to be creative and the history of creation, so that we can continue to expand and get out of this state where everything has to be in a box and everything has to be clear cut, defined.
Are you asking a
I'm
question?
asking a question. I'm sorry. Which history of creation? There's multiple depending upon what culture, which area of the world.
Exactly. All
Okay.
of them,
All, yeah.
all the creation.
There we go.
I don't know, I like different perspectives. I like different mindsets. Like, if someone says the sky is orange, I'm like, how do you see the sky is orange? Like, show me. Tell me what's in your mind. I'm not really, no, it's not a clue. So I just hope to create, like I said, I was talking about creating a youth program for you to come in and create art and learn the history of their art. not necessarily like visual art or performing art, but maybe like culinary or martial arts. So I think that's it. Thank you guys for tuning into the Zoom. I love you all.
All right.